Morning, Jason. How are you?
I'm great.
Oh, wow. Great. Okay.
You're doing great today.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a powerful. Okay. Right on. In case for those at home, thanks for joining. In case you didn't catch that, that is the the man, the myth, the legend, Jason Anderson with an E.
That's
I
right.
mean Anderson, not the Jason. From Boston, and I'm Matt Kimball from Dripping Springs, Texas. And we are here to talk all things IT with the More Insights and Strategy podcast.
Yes.
Jason, you are just north of Boston. How's the weather going up there? Is it turning springish?
Uh, there are boats in the river, so it is turning springish for sure. There's buds on the trees and boats in the river, so we're getting there.
I thought you said butts in the river. Boats is
Yeah,
better.
a little chilly to get in the river. And actually, the Merrimack River,
It's always too chilly. Yeah.
well, it's also too dirty.
Oh, well, yeah. That's most rivers up there.
Downstream, you're downstream from all those mills and stuff in Lawrence and stuff.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The great towns
They
of
actually will
Lawrence.
only let you swim in the river certain weeks.
What's that?
They'll let you swim in the river certain weeks, and then there's other weeks where like just the boats, thanks.
I remember when I was a kid, we'd go canoeing in Dedham. We'd go canoeing in the Charles, on the Charles with one of my uncles.
Yes.
And he was like, do not put your hands in the water. Uh, like,
But they cleaned that one up.
it's cleaned up now.
It's
Yes.
clean now. Yeah.
Anyway, hey, we are going to talk all things IT. This is episode 6, so we're still kind of fresh at this, but having fun. And for those kind of following along at home, all 4,082 of you, we ask that you don't take anything we say as financial advice. I have to get this disclaimer out. I'm going to learn how to say it really fast, like at the end of a car ad on TV. But anyway, don't take anything we say as financial advice. This is just two guys chatting about tech and having fun. Does that sound right?
Perfect.
Okay, so what is new? You were somewhere last week. I think we're both kind of hitting on topics from the same event last week. You were out in Las Vegas, is that correct, last week?
That was last week.
And what were
Yes.
you doing there?
Well, let's start with the most important part of the week, which was I saw Fish at the Sphere, which is like every Gen X New Englander bucket list item right there. Like, you went to college in New England in the 90s. No, you got to do it. And it was worth every penny. But while I was there checking out Fish and Trey and the boys, I also went to Google Next. So, which was almost as good as Fish at the Sphere, but
Almost.
Almost. Yeah, good show.
Now, what did you pick up there at Google Cloud Next 2026?
The big headline for me is that they kind of there was a it's no secret that the guy who runs Google Cloud is Thomas Kurian, and he's an ex-Oracle guy and had great success there. And last year I was commenting how I went to a session with their go-to-market leadership, and those are a lot of ex-Oracle people. And it definitely seems they got the memo on how to begin to sell technology more effectively in the enterprise. And it really showed up in their agentic suite. I mean, it's complete, it's packaged. They've got a good story around it. They've really done the extra effort to kind of bring their products together in a meaningful way that translates well into customer value. So if you look at the new Agent Enterprise or Gemini Enterprise product set, it's I would say that if you look at it year over year compared to itself, it's a huge step forward. If you look at it from the perspective of what's out there from, say, Microsoft or maybe even Salesforce, who have Agentforce out there, you're going to say, okay, these guys are now on the hunt for they're in the front pack, right? So they really move forward in a big way. And like I said, what made it so significant for especially the IT crowd is that it actually looks like an IT product instead of a bunch of different stuff, right? And I think that's a major deal, right? So that's pretty cool.
Right on. So they're finally, it's been kind of the hit across, Google Cloud for years, right? It's kind of like they're not really the enterprise cloud. They're more kind of like, super developers and kind of like more niche-y in their play. But what you're seeing is this approach to delivering enterprise services is really kind of getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
Any like, was there anything you saw while you're out there? You're like, I'm not jiving with that, or kind of left you scratching your head a little bit, or you think they, kind of 10 out of 10 on the kind of vision, execution, competitive kind of front?
I think that one of the things that kind of stuck out with me wasn't necessarily I didn't jive with it, but I was a little disappointed not to see more. Anti-gravity is a pretty good development tool. So they had a developer keynote, but they spent their whole time showing up Gemini Enterprise and the tool set that goes with it, which is really more of a no-code, low-code thing. And that's great. There's no problem with that. Like I said, I was fairly impressed with it, but I also kind of was like, well, wait a second, where's the pro tools, right? Where's the stuff that the guys who, build the agent that's going to expand the whole enterprise, or build the next generation, React application, or whatever it might be. They do have a pretty good tool set there, and they just really didn't talk about it. And I think that kind of plays into their story well, right? So, and would have played into that story well. It didn't conflict with it. So I guess I was a little disappointed I didn't see that. I was pretty impressed with the infrastructure stuff. The security and data stuff especially was great. And then I'm sure you're going to talk about the TPU thing. Oh, that was the other thing that disappointed me. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's start with real, okay? Last year at Google Next, they said, hey, everybody, we're going to do a special analyst event on the first night. And they took us to the Sphere, and we saw behind the scenes of how they made the Wizard of Oz at the Sphere.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Blew our minds, right?
Yeah.
So this year they say, hey, everybody, we're doing a special event at F1.
Oh.
So ooh, all right, this is cool. And so you had this kind of very high bar set last year, right?
Yeah.
So you show up and you walk into this massive F1 building, and there's this huge, cocktail area. Everyone's mingling, doing their thing. And there's this massive curtain on one side. And everybody's like, what's on the other side of the curtain?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, they're thinking it's the new Red Bull car. They're thinking it's Max Verstappen. They're thinking it's something, a Ferrari, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's blah, blah, blah. Then they open the curtain and they bring us in to sit down. And what was in there? Chips. What an anticlimactic. Like last time, I'm sitting there like, what? Where'd the money go? What happened? So yeah, Pro Tools and the whole F1 kind of letdown.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Google.
Hey, are you an F1 fan?
Sort of, yeah. I'm into it.
It seems to be gaining in popularity quite a bit. I hear more and more people who a couple of years ago couldn't even spell F1.
Netflix, baby.
Is that what it is? The Netflix?
Right, man. It's like a soap opera. People love it.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's good. It's a solid show. I only watched the first 3 seasons, but that's what got me into that, and my son being into it. That got me into it.
They have a new. They had a similar kind of series on the Tour de France, which was fascinating to watch as well. Kind of like all the behind the scenes stuff that goes on. And
I'm a massive Tour fan, so that too. But yeah,
it makes me realize how lame I am. I'm struggling after swimming 1,000 yards, and these guys are like getting Anyway, yeah. I was going to go into Lance Armstrong territory. I do have a Lance Armstrong story, but I won't. Anyway, so I am going to talk TPUs.
Nice.
So chips. So, all right, I'm going to run count. Do you want to give your thoughts on the TPUs before I do? Because I'm going to be maybe a little not as positive.
I just am really impressed with I'm impressed with what Google's trying to do. And if you look at what's happened in the last couple of weeks with, AMD having a great quarter, Intel having a great quarter, ARM announcing their own GPU thing, it's clear to me that people are going, hey, NVIDIA isn't necessarily the only answer. Now, of course, they are the 500-pound gorilla, but the fact that there's so much activity going on in this space, I just think that type of innovation ultimately is a good thing. Maybe specific iterations might not be, but ultimately it's going to help everybody out long term. So
100% with you. And to what you said, two things can be true at once. NVIDIA will continue to be the market leader, and they will continue to own market share. Even as inference comes along and kind of dilutes that, they will still continue to lead. I have no doubt about that. With that said, AMD is going to have a stronger presence. Intel, forget about Gaudi, but what Intel has done with Xeon and AMX is really
right.
interesting. And what they have coming with Crescent Island is a good entry point. You have that. You have AWS with Trainium. You have Microsoft Azure with Maya, and you have Google with TPU. TPU that's been around for 11 years now.
Yeah.
People forget that are playing in that inference space. And then you have these newcomers. Like there's a company. There's a company that just came out of stealth mode a couple of weeks ago called NuvaCore. And for those following at home, that's the Nuvia guys, the ones that built that really cool ARM chip for Apple, and started a company, a silicon company, and within 2 years got scooped up by Qualcomm for billions of dollars. They just came out of stealth mode. Those guys just came out of stealth mode to create their own silicon. You've got Sci5, which is a RISC-based chip company that's playing in the AI space. And then you've got Tenstorrent, led by Jim Keller, who's doing a big event today that is doing RISC-based inference engines. There is a lot to what you're saying. There is a lot of activity, and it's going to be really fun and interesting to watch. And tell me if you disagree. I'll get into the TPU in a second. Tell me if you disagree. But I think when you look maybe 5 years out, maybe a little bit longer, and you look at broad enterprise adoption of AI, agentic AI, kind of more the traditional generative generative, and then even like the traditional machine learning, you're going to see a variety of silicon and silicon vendors playing across the data center and the edge and the devices to drive inference everywhere. So you might have NVIDIA sitting in your data center. You might have something from Tenstorrent sitting on devices out on a manufacturing floor or something. And there's a real opportunity. So there's a real opportunity for a lot of these players to find a footing. There's also an opportunity for a company to come along and say, hey, someone's got to orchestrate across all of the silicon, and VLLM ain't the answer. There's a lot of kind of stuff in there.
It's all I have to say is MacBook Neo, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that, Apple came out and $600 laptop, and it can run local models pretty well.
Yep.
And they're working with Google on these little gems. So
Yep.
I'm assuming iOS. I mean, that's an A18 chip. That's not a M5 Pro, right?
Right.
So, I mean, you think about what the hell's the M6 going to look like from Apple this year, right? That's a good question. But, and it's not just Apple, it's everybody, right? So you're right. The thing is that everybody looks at this thing as like you're going and talking to a brain, and all these different size models are different size brains. And that's not really the right way to look at it, because at some point these brains are going to talk to each other in a more meaningful way than A to A protocol, right?
Yep.
And it's going to be everywhere. And so, I think it's a massive opportunity, and it can't be undershadowed. I mean, I was at AWS this week, and they were showing me their new tool, which they call Quick, right? Which is kind of like a Claude desktop-like thing, right? It's kind of that. It's like that, right?
Yeah.
But what they did that's different is they shoved a knowledge graph into it to keep all your context. So there's a lot of people out there playing around with like Claude Desktop and OpenClaw. And then there's a lot of people out there playing with tools like Obsidian, right? Like Mike Leone, who we work with, is an Obsidian junkie, right?
Yeah.
And he basically keeps all of his context in that place.
Yep.
Well, AWS has put those two things together into this Amazon Quick thing. And basically what I said to the guy was, hey, I know this is probably disruptive to your business model in terms of, selling consumption, but why don't you put a Nova LLM on this sucker and see what it can do?
Oh, yeah. Right.
And the dude was like, he was like, roadmap. He did not want to hear it. But the fact of the matter is that that's what's coming next on the desktop is you're going to have a knowledge graph, an LLM, and this assistive technology like Claude Desktop or like or co-work, actually something more like co-work or OpenClaw. And that's going to be everywhere.
Yep.
And it's not going to make, and here's the funny part is, this isn't a financial advice show. I don't think it's going to hurt the cloud guys as much as you think.
No,
it's not going to like take tokens to a different place.
No.
It's going to actually make net more tokens happen.
Yeah.
Right?
So that all leads to TPU.
Yes.
Actually, so Google has an opportunity. Let me get the positive out on TPU. So for those following it along at home, and Jason knows this, TPU latest accelerator from Google is actually 2 accelerators. They branched off into what they call TPU8T, which is for training, and TPU8I, which is for inference. There's a lot of shared silicon architecture between the two. One of the biggest differences is the training has sparse cores on it, so it allows for really high parallelism. So you can kind of, you can do a whole bunch in parallel with a whole bunch of HBM. And the inference side takes those off and puts in kind of an orchestrator that allows for inference to share HBM and SRAM, which is really important to the 2 kind of legs to inference, which is kind of the prefill, which is kind of context setting, get all your information together, and then the decode, which is, develop the answers, create tokens, and send them out to users. Really interesting stuff. The chip architecture itself, I really like. I like that Google is thinking differently. Interestingly, they kind of are going against the grain with AWS. If you remember at reInvent last December, Matt Garman was talking about Trainium and inference and how he's like, you know what, we have this thing called inferentia, and we're really not paying as much attention to that. We're really focused on Trainium because it can do training and it can do inference kind of in one chip. And by the way, we're going to do this thing called disaggregated. He didn't say it then, but a few months later, we're going to do this thing called disaggregated, bring in Cerebras to do that decode and kind of do the token generation. And at GTC, NVIDIA kind of went heavily into disaggregated with, with the B300 and with Grok as an LPU to do the prefill and decode. And so Google went a little bit against the grain. I don't have a problem with them doing that. I get it. There are a couple of things that are kind of still gnawing at me, though. The first is, you talked about enterprise and like how they've done a lot to kind of be more enterprise friendly. When I look at TPU, I don't see it necessarily as enterprise friendly. Part of it is because if that future state we talk about with, heterogeneous kind of environments where you've got, NVIDIA, AMD, TPU, everything else, TPUs they're not prepared today when you get outside of a single host kind of environment. They're not designed to work in a heterogeneous environment. No. So an on-prem, off-prem hybrid, it ain't working for you. You got to be either all in on TPU or you're all out on TPU, one or the other. I know they're maturing their compiler and a little bit more on their software stack to make it more enterprise ready and to get it contributed into the open source community. They're a little bit behind on that, but that's one of the bigger fundamental flaws I saw. The other one I saw was on the training side. It feels like as the market is really kind of indexing on inference, they're doubling down on the training. And I ask myself, is this kind of to fulfill that Anthropic agreement? Or who in the enterprise you're really targeting with that training chip? Is there really an enterprise play, or is this really just for the foundational models? And you're kind of going to focus on the 8i for your enterprise customers. It's okay if that's what you're doing, but be kind of transparent with it.
Well,
I'll let you weigh in there. Sorry.
You mentioned Anthropic, but they also do have their own foundation model.
Yeah.
And that foundation model does inference for every single search you do these days on Google. They brought up, oh man, the number was staggering. they did almost as much. They served almost as much AI search in the first 3 months of the year as like they did the entire last year. So the number that he threw out at the keynote was insane. I have it written down. I should have remembered it, but basically it comes down to, the amount of serving they're doing on the inference side is like up 4x, right? And at least, and that the numbers were just staggering. Like it was like, wow, these guys are so you are right. I mean, there is an element to this of they have to drop the cost of continuing to manage and maintain Gemini, because ultimately what's going to drive monetization is not the model, right? The other stuff. It's the agents, it's the YouTube stuff. It's going to be, that's where they're going to make their money. It's not the model, but the model is critical to those things being unique.
Without a doubt. The question is, did you need to create a specific piece of silicon to train that model, or could you still?
Fair point, right? What's the economics of that, right? I don't know.
And it's not, by the way, it's a great piece of architecture in silicon. The question is, if you're thinking 5 years out and kind of enterprise adoption of AI, does that chip add any value into that? It might, I don't know, but I haven't heard a story from them that said that company with 5,000 servers that has to activate enterprise AI, this 8T is going to be a value because of this. 8i, I can see the value, but they don't have the broad kind of integration points yet.
That's not dissimilar to what they do with everything else, though. I mean, they start with themselves first. I mean, even this, if you look at like their agent platform is a good example, where they were talking about openness, but then they just pointed to 2 standards that, by the way, they have a hand in, right? So it's not. Whereas like when you go look at somebody like, let's say, Salesforce's agent, they're talking about, well, we actually have an entire lattice of integration technology through MuleSoft. We can do this, we can do that, we can do this, so we can integrate with other people. It's not necessarily a problem having to use them for agentic governance. It's a question as to, if you're going to build those agents the Google way and in the Google ecosystem, you're all set. But if you're going to want to try to support third-party agents or start to do cross or even a multi-platform model, right? Like where you're working with multi-agentic platforms, Google isn't going to be as good as what you see from, say, maybe a Microsoft or a Salesforce in that case. That's where they're a little limited. So I do think they kind of tend to focus on, all your things are belong to us, right? Where it starts with, right? And, and that's going to be something that's going to your point, that's going to turn some people off for sure.
There's one other thing, and this is not a Google thing for me. It's a Google thing, but it's a everybody thing, except for NVIDIA. When you are launching a product or announcing a product, and you say we are 80% faster than our last generation, that is fantastic for folks that have used you and understand, kind of have a baseline to work from. If you're trying to talk to the general audience, that number is absolutely meaningless. Relevant. And when you are not saying, here's how we compare against NVIDIA on who owns 95% of the market plus, here's how we compare against them on, forget about even the training cost, but on inference cost per token, find some measurement, tokens per watt, right? Here's how we compare against them. It's like you're missing a real opportunity, and you create more doubt in the mind of that enterprise CIO than you do answers. Because
they only did it in one spot.
What's that?
They only did that in one spot where they compared themselves against the market leader, and that was the data stuff.
Yeah.
And they didn't say who the competition was, but it was clear Databricks, right? But the point is, they came out and said, "Hey, here's where we stand next to this guy." Right?
Yeah. But it's like it's really stuff where I think the market in general, and whether it's AWS is not really all that different, Microsoft isn't all that different. They're trying to protect those relationships they have with folks that are NVIDIA, who's deploying a bunch of GPUs into their. I get it, right? Or AMD, but at some point, if you want to win the hearts and minds of the enterprise, you have to show them how you're relevant to them and why you matter. And by soft shoeing it and being indirect, you're never going to get there.
I think that's a problem with the entire AI thing right now, right? I mean, everybody's basically like trying to defend their base, and nobody's really talking about stealing share yet, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if that's, I don't know what that is, right? I mean, if you want to be disruptive, and AI is certainly the most disruptive thing we've seen in the last 10 plus years, why aren't you doing that more aggressively? They are playing it a little safe on the marketing, I think, believe it or not.
Which is fine. But again, good silicon. I really like it. And I think like I said, the architecture is great. Oh, yeah, the last thing I wanted to hit on was the disaggregated thing. This is interesting. So, while I'm sorry, I keep getting brighter and darker. It's my lovely hat here. While NVIDIA and AWS went down this disaggregated at the system level front, Google seemed to talk about it more at the chip level, which I thought was really interesting. And I would like to see how they are framing the argument for chip level disaggregation versus system level, because I can see where the chip level disaggregation is going to fail kind of quickly. But I'm sure I'm missing something. I would have loved to have seen some kind of story from them that said the way AWS is doing it or proposing, the way NVIDIA is proposing, I'm sure the way, I don't know this, but I'm sure the way AMD is going to propose, because everybody falls in line, is not the best way. And here's why. Here's the Google position. I didn't hear that from them.
So before we wrap I did want to throw one more thing out, which was OpenAI and Microsoft sort of the divorce became official, right? Yeah. And the day after the divorce became official, they announced that they were going to be AWS's new best friend, right?
Yeah.
And I was actually, this week, I was out with AWS at their event called What's Next with AWS. And it was interesting because AWS kind of stuck this into the middle of the spring calendar. And they had a whole bunch of announcements, and I've talked about the other announcements already, so I won't bother people with that. I'm going to write some more about that in the coming weeks. But this OpenAI thing was interesting on two levels. The first was that it's largely a marketing thing, right? I think there's this element of it where, I mean, it's a marketing thing when the chief revenue officer's up on stage with the CEO of AWS and not a head of engineering, right? So, or Sam himself, but Sam was in court this week fighting another billionaire, so that's a different story for a different day. But what I'll say is that what stuck out with me with this whole thing was that they are they're putting together a story around Bedrock, which makes sense, right? There's also a bit about this whole thing called managed agents, which essentially is AWS has been doing this for a couple of years now, where they're basically building managed services around specific products. So they're basically saying, hey, don't worry about it, just pass us this, and they charge a premium of say 15 to 20% over just a regular instance. Yeah. But what's interesting about this is that AWS has basically built a managed service around somebody else's harness, which is the first time they've done that. They've done this with their data tools. They've done this with Kubernetes. So this is pretty interesting that they're now doing a third-party partnership for a managed instance. But what also is interesting about it is the notion that there is claim that they're going to work. They specifically said, everybody says they're going to work together, right? When they say, hey, listen, this is just marketing now, we get it. But, we're going to make some stuff. We promise. They specifically came out and said, we're going to work on new models together. So I actually met the person in charge of the relationship, and I cornered her, and I'm like, tell me more. And unfortunately, right now, they're not ready to share what types of models and what that means. Yeah. But it is kind of interesting tease because they were very specific. So they did the marketing thing. They did a new product that is semi-unique. Yeah. They're also this claim. So it's right now I'm kind of giving it I'm holding it up as, well, it's pretty much marketing. But you know what? December isn't that far away, right? It's 7 months, and AWS, usually saves their best stuff for Vegas. Yep. So I'm interested to see what they announce then. So I'm just going to put that little tease out there. Oh, that's interesting. Oh. Yeah. Look at you, huh? Hey, man. Spicing things up a little bit. Call me Scoop. Hey, what are you coming up for travel over the next few weeks? I will be at IBM Think which is in lovely Boston, Massachusetts. Not the good part. It's in the part that's gentrified and kind of not charming. But I can take the bus there now because I live closer to Boston. So it's a win. I will be at Think. And then I think the next time we talk, I will also be going to Sapphire for the first time.
Oh, right on.
I'm going down there, and I'll tell you, I wrote recently about SAP. They're doing some pretty cool AI stuff. For instance, they came up with a model that does structured data prediction, which if you're in the ERP space, data holes are a thing and they're real. And if you can have a model that begins to predict how to fill in those holes, it's a pretty cool. They have some pretty cool AI stuff that's it's very much built for their user base. And I think that actually is pretty cool because they're not just doing it for the sake of doing it. They're really solving their own customers' problems. So I'm kind of interested in hearing more about that. I'll also say that, just another Scoop Anderson this week, I'll also say that I've taken a part in a number of the launches that are going down at Think, and tune in. Tune in to IBM. There's going to be stories there.
All right. Sure. Oh, here we go.
Yep.
You need to get one of those hats, those reporters hats from the 50s, the old almost fedora looking thing,
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool things sticking up.
Maybe one of
right on. I'll be up your way next week. I'm at Red Hat Summit the week after and an Oracle Cloud event. And then we hit Dell Tech World and the flywheel begins. We travel through the end of June, but it's going to be fun. Lots to talk about.
I get a break, end of May break, and end of May break, and then June picks up again, and then it'll be summer.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff going on.
A lot of good stuff. Hey,
except the Red Sox, who you said would be good this year, and they suck.
Dude, don't even get me going. Red Sox are fired Ian Veritek and all their hitting coaches. Oh my gosh. And Crochet's on the IL now.
My understanding is John Henry is trying to convince Trump to attack the Dominican Republic so we can actually get some real talent again.
I struggle because there's a lot of good talent on that team, but that I just, for whatever reason, look, you got 5 potential all-star outfielders vying for 3 positions.
Yep.
You've got a couple of holes in the infield. You've got a great pitching staff, but it's like it ain't coming together.
I will say this: bringing the dude up from Worcester. I'm a huge Woosok fan.
Yeah.
I spent so much of my life in Worcester area, and I got to tell you, he got some magic out of those kids that are there now. It's not a dumb move to promote him and see what he can get out of these younger guys.
No.
The Woosoks have been competitive for a while. They're pretty good. So in their own league and in their own right, and they've moved a lot of guys up. So it's an interesting choice. I'm enthused by the choice. I'm disappointed in how we got there. So
yeah. And then the Celtics lost last night, so now they're tied. They should have won this. They should have swept the series. Bruins they're down and they're in Buffalo again. It's just, man, it's not been a good few weeks for Boston sports. I'm on the edge here, Jason.
I heard the traffic is going to run all the way up 495 from Foxborough for the World Cup, all the way up to my house. Which, by the way, for everybody, that's 120 miles.
Oh man, that's right. The World Cup is coming. Oh, when did it start?
There already was a game, I think one, a friendly or something. It's starting.
Yeah, I remember a friendly a few weeks ago. Brazil and somebody else.
It's July. It's gonna be heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm avoiding Boston that month. That's crazy. Anyway, all right. Listen, hey, great chat. Remember at home, nothing we say is to be taken as financial advice, but please do like and subscribe. And if you don't like it, like and subscribe anyway, and tell your friends to tune in, or tell your enemies to tune in if you don't like it. And we will see you in a couple of weeks. And Jason, be safe traveling, and I'll see you next week up in Boston.
See you next week in Boston. Yep.
Everybody, we'll see you.